You are now in the realm of enlightenment and transformation.
Welcome to Chief Speaks.
All music performed and produced by Yuya.
Enlightenment comes from allowing yourself to journey through the dark shadow of death, the primordial abyss of wisdom's waters. For it is the treasures and mysteries that lie waiting in the dark that transform us and propel us to a new enlightened state. One should never aspire to live in the light nor the dark, but should journey between the two in order to evolve the overall reality into a self-actualized creation. Knowledge is your light, as wisdom is your darkness. The bold interplay of the two in your life leads you to an enlightened understanding of yourself and the universe you've created. Male is your enlightenment, female is your transformation, child is your evolution. Woman, accept the light into your darkness, so it may enlighten you. Man, go bring your light boldly into the darkness, so that it may transform you. Enlightenment and transformation.
I love you so much because you just don't know what you've just done for me. Thank you so much.
Wow. Okay. This is like the best call I've had in ages on BTR.
So this show was meant for me to be able to hear today, and I'm so thankful.
That's his home.
Therefore, now a new pathway has now been cut in order to get to the Almighty, where there may not have been one. So the communication with them, if they have enough power and strength to talk to us, the communication will be very clear.
That's one of the reasons I don't get into the current events thing too much, because it starts to become a perpetual alarm clock that we just keep hitting snooze on. I speak to the ascended masters, quote unquote. I talk about spiritual stuff, but I also speak about some very practical, we can do today things.
Be as natural as you can be with your spiritual. You can't always go by your feelings, because your feelings are corrupted. Your feelings are just as corrupted as everything else, your chakras and everything else. You got to know what's beyond you, and that's why we have elders. We can't do everything. You can't get everything out of books or weekend certification. You can have the most powerful, ancient, oldest, most, as far as you know, truthful tradition in your hands, and if you still have a dirty spirit, you're not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to learn anything. You're not actually going to grow. I try to teach in a way where I make myself obsolete. That's always been my goal, to make myself obsolete.
I really wanted to, kind of big you up. I think you're awesome.
There's a lot of elders out here right now that want to know what's going on. They're not getting on Twitter and stuff like that, but they want to be up on the new stuff. Sit down and have some conversations with them. It's not always about hearing their story. It's also about being news reporters for them and letting them know, like, yeah, this is what's happening right now. They may tell you something about what happened in Charleston that you couldn't even. Your spirituality has to create sane spiritual family. Okay, and that family exists first inside of you. You have to express the different expressions of that rainbow coalition of spirits inside of you first. Okay, don't let communities hijack that rainbow. See, the problem is when we come into the conscious community, the dudes are doing the same thing that the women are doing.
I just want to say that I really enjoy your show every Sunday, and my friend and I call it going to church. When we call him, we'll be like, you going to church? And I'm like, where have y'all been at?
God cannot go against its own truth. So anytime you have an inkling that God is going against its own truth, then God is no longer behaving as God. So therefore, the spiritual community doesn't recognize God. You dig where I'm coming from? Or can we have a new thought? Can we step outside of the books for a second and have a new conversation about hair weaves and wigs? Can we have a new conversation about homosexuality? Can we have a new conversation about vegan eating? We doing right. It's a good day for exorcism.
347-945-7680. Call in and let's build. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Chief Speaks on Enlightenment and Transformation and all of the other channels that we are currently syndicating our broadcasts on. I am Chief Yuya, also known as Haru Yuya Tiasan Anu, and I want to welcome you to another segment. As you know, this month we're dealing with the topic of race first, and of course we've covered 2 strongs already of content dealing with I know what is to be for many people a very controversial as well as thorny and sometimes even clumsy topic when dealing with race. But I want to thank you all who have been commenting and sharing the videos and sharing the shows and discussing them and everything like that. It's good to have that level of engagement and to know that you're taking something away from what's being presented, other than just, you know, the small little things. You know, as you begin to discuss them and you share them, it opens up the conversation, and that's what really needs to happen. You know, when ideas are presented forth to you, it's not so much about just regurgitating what has been presented, but it's really about exploring and building on and cultivating the little gems and the nuggets that are presenting to you. So again, I want to thank you all who have commented and who have shared and everything like that. But before we get into our second part of it, right, because last strong we did the first part and we just covered some basics in terms of our thinking as it relates to race and the multi-dimensional purpose and place and posturing of what we call the races that exist on the planet. But prior to that, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping, and I want to let you guys know that yes, we do have another webinar coming up next month on crystals. Okay, so I'm doing I wanted to share a little bit on it real quick and just inform you guys to make sure that you head over to the Sadulu House website and get the information on that. That website is SADULUHOUSE, and you can go and you can get the information on the crystals webinar. The angle that we'll be taking is a bit different than probably what you're used to hearing about crystals. You've probably noticed so far, those of you who have engaged in those presentations, that they're all pretty different than what's usually presented. When I'm giving the content or helping with the content, I'm always making sure that we're not covering redundant ground. And the same goes for any time our new nation is presenting. I'm always trying to make sure that we're not being redundant, because we're in an information age. We're inundated with information. You can go anywhere and find out which crystals are good for a headache, what's good for a sore throat, you know, what's good to lift your mood, what's good for protect, you know, it's all over the place. And a lot of the information is unfounded because it doesn't take much to put up a site or just to put up a posting and a bunch of pictures or a video and seem like an authority. But with the webinars, which we're really transitioning into classes now, which I'll speak about, but with the webinars, we really try to give you the information and then give you hands-on techniques so you can see for yourself why this responds the way it does, or why this is considered to be this, or if it even is that for you. You know, it's like sometimes, you know, someone will say, oh, take this energy drink, it'll give you energy. You drink it, you don't feel anything. And you keep drinking saying, well, I know I'm supposed to be feeling something, but maybe it just doesn't respond to your system that way. Maybe there's some other things going on in your system that, you know, may either be blocking that or just may not need that. You know, so it's important to have a personal connection with your spiritual work. It's important to have a personal connection with your ritualistic work, which is kind of what we're going to be speaking about a bit today. But yeah, I just wanted to urge all of you guys to head over there to that site and check out the information and sign up. Now, one of the things that's been coming up pretty often with the webinars is a question after the webinar, will the materials still be available? And typically we haven't been doing that because we've been presenting them just like they were workshops, and they're just workshops that you can attend from the comfort of your own home. So no, just like any other workshop, unless we film it, you're not going to be able to watch it perpetually. However, we're changing that. We are now transitioning the webinars into full-fledged classes, which actually allows us to, or I should say courses, which allows us to actually add more content to them. So going forward, and even really from the chakras piece, we have content that's up there. You can go back, once you buy it, you can go back, you can, all of the handouts are there, the notes are there, there's extra videos, so it's like, it's a full class, you know, definitely beyond what you're paying for it, what your donation is, you know. So we're doing that for several reasons, one of which, in all honesty, to make some things easier for us. you know, because that question keeps coming in all the time. Oh, you know, because sometimes people get real foolish, you know, and it's like you're telling them every Sunday, every show, the webinar is going to be this day. Then they'll email you 10 minutes before the webinar. Oh, I had something to do, but will I be able to check it out later? No, you knew it was coming, you know, or I just missed it. Or you got people who are still trying to watch the webinars from their phones after we said don't do that. And then they will email during the webinar, which is also very foolish. Like, you got to check your brain sometimes. You know, like if the webinar is going on, why are you emailing the person who's actually presenting the webinar while the webinar is going on? You know, like, you got to put 2 and 2 together. And the reason I'm saying some of these things is because we make this process very easy for you to get the information. It's very easy. It's easy financially, it's easy technically, and it's even easy socially. You know, we're very accessible. If you can't get it like this, then you're in the wrong place. You need to go somewhere that's just going to spoon feed you. Go back to church. If you can't get it like this and you're like, I can't figure out how to use YouTube, I hit the play button, and this is not for you. You know, you need an experience where someone's going to hold your hand and spoon feed you. You know, and I've said this before, and I hate to have to say it again, but that's the value when you have your own gig. When you're not beholden to any master, you say what needs to be said. I don't have to say the customer's always right. No, some of y'all are like crazy. Some of the things you do are just really ASS backwards. You got to really check that, you know? So that's why we're transitioning it into a form where there'll actually be more content, but also, yes, if you missed it because you decided you wanted to go to your son's Boy Scouts meeting, you can go back and plug in later, so you won't be asking those questions. All right. So that's the housekeeping I wanted to address. The Crystals class / webinar will be released next month, and that one, even though I've urged you to go to some of the, you know, sometimes I speak about the webinars, sometimes I don't. I am instrumental in all of them, so I'm not going to say that I like some more than other. I mean, I'm the one who designed them and said, okay, we're going to do this month, that month, that month. But certain ones, in my opinion, are crucial to your actual work. So like the crystals one, like herbs, oils, remember those from Last Strong from 2015? I urge you guys to check those out, because herbs and oils are like instrumental in most of the work you do ritualistically. So it's like, yeah, get that. You know, these are like your rudimentary stuff. And then working with rocks, working with stones, working with metals, working with crystals. That's also something that you're going to do pretty often when you're doing spiritual work. So those are the like webinars that I'll jump in and say, okay, let me just kind of nudge you guys. Yeah, you should probably get that one. You know, that would help you out a lot. For the most part, what we've been doing here at our new has been pretty foundational, you know, in terms of like, these are the tools you need to do the work that you want to do. And the webinars are designed the same way. We still haven't even dealt with the master level information as of yet. It's all rudimentary, so that way at least, and really that's fine, because it's the rudiments and the foundational stuff that's the stuff that gets you through. You know, that's really the stuff that your ritualistic things that you're going to do every day and whatnot are usually the simpler things, but when you have a psychological grasp and hold on them, it becomes so much more powerful. So, you know, I would say definitely the crystal ones is another rudimentary, along with the herbs, along with the oils, the meditation one. You know, these are all like really strong rudimentary ones. You know, get these under your belt, because, you know, crystals, everyone has access to crystals. I mean, even if you can't go to the store and buy them, you can go outside and get stones and things to work with. And your whole body is a crystal. You're a hard crystal. So everything that we see manifested, we talk about actualization and materialization, they're all crystals. They're all ashe that's been frozen or that's been slowed down into a hard form or a soft form. Soft form being like wind or being like water, a hardened form being like a body or like a stone or like a tree. But it's all crystalline. you know, that's why, again, I'm saying it's kind of an important one that you want to check out. But let's get to race first again. Let's deal with that. And again, like I said, we're on part 2. I'm striving for some degree of simplicity, because I know when dealing with these type of subjects, it can get complex only because of the emotions that are injected into the discussions often. So I'm trying to keep it very baseline for right now, and then we can build on it later. We have a little bit of time, a little bit. So there was something that I wanted to speak on that I thought would help you guys to kind of piece some of this together. And you know, last time when we spoke, we dealt with really just the balancing imperative and obligation of the various racial currents. We realized that races are currents. But there's another piece too that I want to hit, and we're going to use the movie. There's a movie that came out some years ago. I don't know how many years, probably 5 years or something like that. The Book of Eli is the name of the book, of the actual movie, starring Denzel Washington and I think it was Molly Kunis, her name is something like that. But in either case, that's a movie that when I first saw it, I said, yeah, this movie is all about race and American individualism. Like, you know, and I love Westerns. I love Westerns, I love martial arts films, but Westerns more than anything. So I mean, and I love post-apocalyptic movies. So it included so many of the elements of the type of movies that I enjoy watching. So it had great entertainment value for me, just the fight scenes, just the whole like bleached out and washed out, you know, colors that they use, and just the whole idea of the Western barbarian, in a sense, who's struggling to interact with society. Okay, but it was really a strong film about race. There was a lot in there, and about racial imperative, what comes first. And of course that aligns with this month's topic when we're dealing with the discussion of race first, right? So, and again, race first doesn't imply that you have to militarize against another race. But if you have to militarize against another race, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. There was a comment left on one of the videos to that effect. It was either the video or on Facebook. They kind of blur together, but someone had said that, you know, yeah, they do understand the diversity of it, and, you know, they had thanked me for explaining it, and they were saying it's just a shame, though, when certain races prey on other races, when they become predatory. And the truth is, if that's what's necessary, then that's what's necessary. You know, we have to begin to look at our existence through this world and through this life plane more as a chess game, as opposed to looking at it from such an emotional perspective and saying, oh, you attacked me, that's not fair. See, that's that bullying mentality, or the anti-bullying mentality, where it's like, you know, no one should do this to another person. Well, nature doesn't even function like that. You have certain animals that are predatory. You have certain animals that are passive. You know, you have certain animals that are scavengers. You know, they don't move for direct confrontation, but they still find their ways to balance out what happens in the universe. You know, imagine if we didn't have vultures. Imagine if we didn't have scavengers. You know how much disease and toxins we have on the planet? So those energies are necessary, you know. So, and I'm not shooting down what the individual said. Obviously, yeah, no one wants to be attacked, but we have to sometimes look at it from a more mature place, and that's what we spoke about before, the maturity of it all, you know. So, just a real quick recap. I'm not going to do a movie decode on the Book of Eli, but I'm just going to kind of pull out certain things. It's an old movie, so it's probably fine online or whatever if you want to check it out and review it while I'm speaking. But the book, or the movie I should say, is basically about a pilgrim by the name of Eli, and he's carrying the last Bible in a post-apocalyptic world. There were 30 years there were wars on this particular time period on the earth, and for 30 years these wars, they were fueled by religious differences. So after the wars ended, the societies that were left, they burned all of the religious books in order to avoid, a catastrophe of that level again, right? Now, this individual who they called him the Pilgrim, but Eli, played by Denzel Washington, was in possession of the last Bible, right? So his objective was to bring the Bible from the east to the west. He kept saying, I'm going west. He was going to Alcatraz Island, which we find out at the end of the movie. Now, of course, this is not a movie decoding, so I'm moving around, but there was a couple of very important elements that were present here that help us to even understand the faith element that comes in with race. So I'm going to use my own assumed designation to explain further. So the assumed designation when someone sees me or hears me is that I'm a black man. That's what's assumed, right? And there's a couple of things that when we speak about black or we speak about white, or and it's always funny when we leave the realm of black and white, we immediately go to nation. Then we'll say Indian, Chinese, right? So we have to kind of understand that when you speak about race, it becomes a detriment to you when you separate it from nationhood. So, like, if you say black, where's black land? Even if you say Caucasian, you can point to the Caucasus Mountains. If we say African, we can point to a landmass, but certainly not a nation. Not a nation. There's many nations, but not a nation. But we start to understand that this idea of, let's say, even blackness has to be associated with a nation, even by legal definition, by the way. Okay? So when you say you're black and and you don't attach yourself to a nation, there's a dissonance that's there, right? Because that nationhood gives you your original, as we spoke about, flag, or it gives you your original imperative. So when we look at, for instance, the book of Eli, what was his original flag and his original imperative? It was the book. And more importantly, it was faith. It was the belief and the faith in what he had from the words that came from that actual book. And we understood that it was a personal thing. Now, how do we know it was a personal thing? Or how do we separate it? I'm going to give you an example of something, and then I'm explaining it in the movie. A lot of times, those who profess their allegiance and they're loyal to their racial identity the loudest are those who don't actually have any real faith in their racial groups, their ethnic groups, and their identities. They're just talking very loud for the purposes of domination and control. So being what you are at the root and at your natural, instinctual, and primal beginnings is a quiet thing. It's not a loud thing. Like, I don't have to run around every 5 minutes saying, I'm a man, I'm a man, I'm a man. I don't have to do that. It's a quiet thing. I don't have to run around every 5 minutes saying, I'm a black man, I'm a black man, I'm black. It's a quiet thing. And why is it allowed to remain quiet? Because me being a man, me being a melanin dominant man, it imbues itself and it saturates everything that I do in life. So I don't have to make loud proclamations. I don't have to go on evangelical missions to dominate people with my identity group, because everything I do is already dominated by that identity. Quietly. The best plan is a quiet plan. So in this movie, we had Eli, the Pilgrim, who had a quiet personal faith, and we had Carnegie. Carnegie was the antagonist of the film. He ran a saloon in like a little town that was basically centered around this saloon. And when we get our first introduction to him in the movie, he's sitting down reading a book on Mussolini, the dictator. So you start to get a sense already that this is an individual that is obsessed with domination. He's obsessed with controlling. And he's older. He's around Eli's age, Denzel Washington's age. So he remembers the Bible. You know, he remembers the control. So we have this antagonist in the name of Carnegie. And again, when we first are introduced to Carnegie, he's sitting reading a book on Mussolini. And the significance of Carnegie as opposed to the pilgrim that we know to be as of Eli or Denzel Washington, the significance of the two characters is really control versus indifference, you see, or interference and interaction versus indifference. In the case of Eli, we have indifference. In the case of Carnegie, we have control and domination. He's completely bent on controlling and domination, or dominating. Now, what we find out about him is that he's in control of a vast amount of resources, physical resources. Why? Because he knew the location of a water spring when he was a child, before everything happened. And he was able to parlay that water, which also is a representation of knowledge, because remember, Carnegie can read. So he's able to parlay that into an actual small town, into some power for himself, and he's looking to build an empire. So you have one who's seeking to control the resources of people, and he's on this hunt for the Bible, for this book, because he remembers as a child that this book was used to control the masses. Now, what we see here when we talk about the loud proclamations versus the quiet proclamations is that Carnegie is an individual who doesn't even believe in the book. He's not a Christian. He's not an adherent to any faith or any belief, but he sees the value in being able to overpower and dominate people with faith and belief. Whereas you have Eli, who is Denzel's character, where it's an internal and quiet thing. So he's not looking to dominate others with his belief. He's not even looking to change the wicked. You know, when he witnesses atrocities along the road, he always talks about the path, stay on the path, which is basically an abandoned highway that he walks to get west. But when he witnesses even atrocities on his road, he doesn't engage, he doesn't interfere, he doesn't, you know, try to set it right or use his spiritual or faith or religious information to try to convert people. He's on one mission, he has one imperative. So we see that when he has to finally come into contact with Carnegie, he's forced to socialize. He goes into the bar to get some water to fill his canteen after coming from the engineer. Remember, he goes to get his battery charged up. Now, the engineer was played by, he was a musician, not Tom Scott, Tom Wade. Can't remember his name right now, but I know he's actually a musician. And that's when he went into the store and he was saying, you know, have you seen this before? Can you charge the battery on this? And he says, yeah, no problem. And he said, where can I get some water across the street? But the only name he had was engineer, because this is where we see the quietness and the personal individualism of the faith, which is a very important point when we're dealing with race relations. His headset, right? That was his mouthpiece to the gods. That's why there was one scene in the movie where he went to take it out, and Solaris, which you meet later, who becomes his protege, says, oh, what was that? What is that? You know, when he's putting it on, and he was like, oh, one question too many. Like, you wouldn't understand. This is the personal voice that I hear in my head. And we knew that on that MP3 player, he was playing Al Green. How can you mend a broken heart, right? But how do we see that it becomes a personal thing? Because he's the only one with this headset, which later is inherited by Solaris, his protege. She takes the headset and she ventures off on her own, meaning that she's now got the commands and instructions and the voice of God in her ear, in the form of Al Green. How can you mend a broken heart? Or how can you mend a broken world, which you could also say. So I don't want to do too much decoding, but some of these points obviously are important. So what we basically see here, but just to kind of simplify it, is we see this scenario where one has a charge and an objective that's implanted in them from a very quiet place, from a divine place. Like he said, he's been walking for 30 years and he was one of the survivors. He said what happened was the wars were going on for so long that we ripped a hole in the sky and the sun came down and burned everything up. Sounds like the rapture. Sounds like the return of a god, you know, and which is a deep, again, I don't want to do, maybe I'll do a Book of Eli decoding later. But he said then shortly after that, he heard this voice that told him, you know, where to find this book. He found the book, and then it said, take it west and don't worry, you just stay on the path and you'll be protected. So that path represents that original imperative, and it is the sanctity of our original imperatives and respecting the sanctity of that really staves off anarchy. Because a lot of times we look at conformity as being the exact thesis or antithesis of conformity. So it's anarchy against conformity, and this is not actually the truth. It is the sanctity or the accepting of individualism that staves off anarchy. When we can accept that we all have an individual call, and in fact, when you can do that, that's how you actually make a group. So even though when we have this individual in the form of Eli, who was the pilgrim, who seemed like, okay, he's doing his own thing. He doesn't want to socialize. He doesn't want Solaris to follow him. He doesn't want to be a part of Carnegie's group. Carnegie was played by Gary Oldman. He doesn't want to be a part of his rovers and his band. He's like, no, I got a mission here. And Gary Oldman, of course, doesn't respect the sanctity of that mission, saying, okay, well, you go do what you got to do. He's saying, no, you got something I want. Even though I don't believe in the book, even though I'm not an adherent of that faith, I can use that as an instrument of controlling the ideological perspective and views of a people. So I'm already controlling their resources through the water, but now I want to use this original source of an imperative to control their ideas. So now when we look at race, let's look at black. Again, I said I would use myself as the example. I'll stay true to that. Blackness or black is a consciousness. It's an idea. It's a state of philosophical, spiritual, and emotional being and mental being. Blackness is not necessarily a physical state. Even when we speak about melanin, I mean, anything that's moving that has carbon, that's alive, that has melanin. So would all those things be different forms of black? Technically, yes. Even despite the racial designation. So we know that when we say, okay, I'm a black woman or I'm a black man, that this is an ideological perspective and standpoint, and it's an ideological perspective and standpoint that begins in a quiet place. When you recognize and realize that the way you relate and the way you connect to the environment, the way you connect to nature, the way you decide to interact with society, right? This is why the Book of Eli was post-apocalyptic, but it was set in a Western format and structure, because Westerns are always about that. Westerns are always about how the individual is going to interact with society. That's why you have the lone gunslinger who comes into town and so forth and so on. Now, the reason we also see that this was so much about race is for a couple of things. One, of course, we find out at the end of the movie that Eli was blind. The whole movie is filmed in sepia tone, so it's like everything is just one color. But you find some very interesting interactions with the greater society. And when we speak about race first, we realize that despite your level of interacting, and understand, interacting and integrating are not synonymous with one another. But despite your degree of interacting and assimilating other components of different societies, different racial and ethnic groups into your own work, into your own imperative, it doesn't necessarily have to distort or dilute that original call. If you look at Eli, this is a movie where we're clearly speaking about a messianic figure. He's a black man, number one. Not only is he a black man, but he transcends the usual and typical age of your hero in a film like that. He's an older black man. But in his headset, he's listening to Al Green, but he fights like a samurai. And the sword he uses is not Asian, it's actually native First Nation, when First Nation, like some of you would call Native American. And there's even a scene when he's describing Faith to his new sidekick, who's a white woman, and he's describing Faith to her, to Solaris, and he was like, listen, it's hard to explain. It's just like when you know something, even though you don't know it. She was like, that doesn't make sense. He said it's the flower in a field of darkness, or something that lights up the night, or lights up the darkness, a flower in a field that lights up and gives you the strength to keep going on. So she says, oh, did you get that from the book? He said, no, Johnny Cash, live from Folsom Prison. So you got this blend of Johnny Cash, Al Green, samurai fighting, black man, you know, native First Nation weaponry. So all of these different assimilations from all of these different cultures. However, the headset locks him in, and the book locks him into a package of still one original imperative. Despite my assimilating all of these different cultures, despite my assimilating all of these different things that I'm using to help me to carry on and to keep me on the path, my original imperative is to go to the West, to bring this book to the West. And we learned that through the work, through the movie, that it's such a personal thing that once the book is taken, we realized he didn't even need the book, because he was the book. He was the embodiment of the faith. He was the embodiment of that personal belief. And Gary Oldman's character, Carnegie, didn't have that. He wanted the tool. He wanted the instrument, because he said, I can use the instrument to dominate. Forget how it would change my character, how it would be inside. So I can wear the skin of my racial designation, but it's not the same thing as having that racial designation alive and true and organic and evolving inside of me. That's what Denzel represented. And that's what Solaris wanted from him the whole time. She was attracted to him and wanted to follow him, not just so that she could leave this saloon town, but she wanted to be with him because of what he knew. It was his knowledge that she was attracted to. So just like when she said, well, listen, I can get you water. Water representing the knowledge, because remember, Carnegie's character could read. No one else could read. So he was knowledgeable. He was smart. He said, Carnegie has all the water. Water is knowledge. So he goes, fills his canteen, gets the water. But she's still hot on his tail. She still wants to follow him. She still wants to be with him. Why? Because she wants to become the next embodiment of that consciousness. So you find at the end of the movie, she sets out, they go to Alcatraz Island, where he shares the Bible with the archivist. And you basically see, this is how we know that race becomes an important factor. Because he shares the information of that Bible with that new society, per se. But I can't even say it's a society. It's a library that they created inside of a prison. You see? So in that prison structure, in that fortress structure, Alcatraz, they create this library. And Solaris within herself knows that this is not enough, that we need to evolve beyond what we've been duplicated from. We need to continue the mission and imperative on of our people. So she eventually leaves. After Eli dies, she takes his sword, takes his headset, becomes the next evolution, the next stage. But this is a white woman. But if we were to judge the book by the cover, the racial designation, we wouldn't even understand, no, it's about the voice that's inside first. Now, does she have that voice? We don't know. Can she use the sword? We don't know. We know that he had it. So it's the same thing when we're dealing with race and we're dealing with race first. That original imperative is always going to be the thing that's true and living inside of you. If you're a Caucasian, if you're an African, if you're an Asian, that's going to be the original imperative, because you're a duplicate of what has been archived before. Even though we respect the sanctity of your individualism, even in your individual stance and your movements towards individualism, it's still a product of what has been already archived and then duplicated forward. So Solaris going forward, we can respect her as an individual. However, she was a duplicate of Eli. She was a duplicate of what came before and an embodiment of what was held in that prison, that information that was held in that prison. You see, so it's very important. I mean, this is another part. We're going to continue this more. Again, I'm trying to keep it at a very basic level because I know when we're dealing with race that it can get very personal and it can get very heated and very confused. But I wanted you to really think about the original imperative and cause, and you can use that book as a model to help you out, to check it out. And there's so much more to it. I'm leaving 90% out of what actually occurred in that movie. But just consider the original charge, the original objective, the original aim that's placed in an individual when they're sent back out. So, and kind of basking in the identity group as opposed to the personal relationship with the charge is what keeps you in the fortress, is what keeps you in the prison, what keeps you in Alcatraz. And at some point, you have to take what you have there and move it out into the next place and interact with society so that it can evolve and go to the next place. This is why Eli had to go to the bar and get the drink of water, end up killing everybody. But he had to interact with society so that he would meet Solaris, so that Carnegie would be impressed with his fighting skills, Solaris would be impressed with his knowledge, so that things could move on. It's your interacting and engaging with the world that carries your racial imperative forward. It's not the archiving and the hiding on an island somewhere that's going to keep your race strong and evolving. This has been Chief Speaks. I want to thank you all for listening up until this point. Remember, sign up for that Crystals class that's coming forward, and I will be here next strong, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, with more Chief Speaks. Thank you so much. I give you all appreciation, gratitude. I send my power to you. I send my strength to you, and definitely a oneness of vision. Until such time, Hotel.
So self-actualization is actualizing the mission and idea of the soul. In order for new life to come, the old life has to rock. We've realized the self is actually that higher entity, that which controls God. You're supposed to birth yourself into these realities and then kill yourself out of those realities. That's the only escape from the matrix. It's that everything here is dying. Everything here is corrupted. Everything, even your beautiful sunset, is a corruption of the real sun. What is your body to your soul? A vehicle of travel. What are the things that you do that are not for money? So we speak about the independent phenomenon of self-actualization. You know, no rules. I'm going to do what I need to do, but I'm also going to show you the depth of my power.
Anu Nation is home to the Anu spiritual order founded by Chief Jegna Haru Yuya Asan Anu. Some of the components of Anu Nation are Anu Life Global Ministries, Enlightenment and Transformation, Sadulu House, and Osiris Life Spiritual Services. SaduluHouse.com is the school component of Anu Nation, where spiritual empowerment through education and training is emphasized. One way that is accomplished is through our monthly webinars. Our webinars are packed with foundational information, rituals, and live instruction to empower your spiritual work. At SaduluHouse.com, you can view our diverse list of topics for this year that range from meditation to sex magic. And you can also register for any of the webinars at your convenience, sign up for our introductory Orisha class, schedule a spiritual reading, and sign up for the Anu Spiritual Training course. Enlightenment and Transformation is the media component of Anu Nation. Here, you can view all of our archive shows from over the years to our current segments. They include Chief Speaks, Masterminds Monday, Anu Asafo, Thunderground Thursdays, and Foundational Fridays. You can also visit us on our YouTube channels. They are Enlightenment and Transformation, Orisha Yoruba, and Anu Nation. Osiris Life Spiritual Services is for those who are ready to take the necessary actions to bring your life into holistic balance. Here we offer consistent monthly one-on-one coaching, solutions that are tailored just for you, practical hands-on self-development techniques that will accompany your monthly readings, and customized practical strategies designed for you that guarantee positive results. Simply choose the package that best fits your needs. And last but not least, alphaomegastore.com. The Alpha Omega Store is our online botanica where we offer divination tools, herbs and incense, DVDs, books, and other hard-to-find ritual items. You can also get our best-selling foundational book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. Other great works from Anu Nation are Shrine and Altar, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, and Natural Hair for Young Women. All great books to assist you on your journey. To find out more on how to get involved with Anu Nation, visit our websites and YouTube channels and be sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter.
Chief Yuya teaches classes on spiritual growth, personal development, and indigenous ancient spirituality. They're absolutely amazing, and they are offered online so you can access them from any location across the globe. The classes are also designed so that you can go at your own pace. So, you can register at any time and enjoy the ongoing support of our online learning community.